In this video, I'm going to tell you why you should read Factfulness. And in its summary, you're also going to hear the 10 instincts that prevent us from appreciating the progress around us in the world. My name is Yaz, and you're watching The Leadership Journey. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and the bell. It would greatly help my efforts to improve my new channel. Let's start with why I read Factfulness. As a leader, one of the things that I'm sensitive to is self-awareness. Improving our self-awareness has a direct positive impact on us as leaders. We need to be on the lookout for biases and be deliberate in our learning and thinking. When I heard that Factfulness surfaces 10 instincts or biases that prevent us from appreciating the progress around us, I had to know more about it. I also heard that it was a highly recommended book by Bill Gates and that he said he'd give away a copy of it to every person graduating college in 2018. 4 million copies. Why? To help young minds better appreciate the growth tendencies and areas of growth in the world so that they can build a better future we would want to live in. Published in 2018, Factfulness is not a book that looks at the world through rose-colored glasses. The authors are not optimists. They label themselves possibilists. They don't hope without reason. They don't fear without reason. The main idea that's repeated throughout the book is things can be bad and getting better at the same time. To create better futures, we need to have a fact-based worldview. Some of our global facts are outdated, and we are the victim of 10 instincts that cloud our view when we think about the global picture. Factfulness has 3 authors. Hans Rosling, who unfortunately passed away before the publishing of his book, his son Ola, and Ola's wife Anna. The Swedish trio co-founded the Gapminder Foundation. Hans Rosling was a physician, professor of international health, and public speaker, including TED Talks that you can check out. I'll link to them in the description. Ola is a statistician and the chairman of the Gapminder Foundation. Anna is a designer who co-developed and then sold Trendalizer to Google in 2007. Let's jump to the 10 instincts that cloud our vision. The first one is the gap instinct. This is our tendency to divide things into 2 distinct and often opposing groups. This is binary thinking. On top of that, we imagine an empty gap in between them. In all this, our use of averages makes things worse. Averages mislead by hiding a spread, a range of different numbers, in a single number. Here's a very important example highlighted in the book very early. The majority of the people in the world live neither in low-income countries nor in high-income countries, but in middle-income countries. Can you guess how much? 75% of them. So instead of we versus them, we need to see 4 levels of income in the world. In level 1, people live with $1 a day. In level 2, people earn $4 a day. In level 3, $16 a day is what you expect as income. In level 4, people make more than $64 a day. In any case, to overcome the gap instinct, when you hear a story that talks about 2 separate groups, remember that the reality is not that polarized. Not only there's no gap in between, but usually the majority is in the middle. We have an instinct to notice the bad more than the good. This is evolutionary. For most of the human history, our ancestors had to pay more attention to threats, the negatives, more than opportunities, the positives, to stay alive. And it's no news that mass media fuels our negativity instincts since they are incentivized to report the drama that gets attention much more than the positives news would. Reporting the gradual improvement won't make the headlines, but an occasional dip would. More bad news does not even automatically equal more suffering. More bad news is sometimes due to better surveillance and reporting of suffering. A devastating consequence of the negativity instinct is the loss of reasonable hope and the ignorance it causes. It is also very easy for people to forget how really things used to be. Beware of rosy pasts or stories about how great we used to be. We tend to glorify our early experiences, and nations do the same with their histories. Don't forget, things can be bad and getting better at the same time. The truth resides most of the time somewhere in the middle. The third instinct is the straight line instinct. This is the tendency to believe that things will continue as they have before on a straight line. A good example is the belief that the world population is just increasing. There are nearly 8 billion people on the planet today. Yes, the population is growing fast, but the growth has already started to slow down. The UN experts are pretty sure it will keep slowing down over the next few decades. They think that the growth will flatten out at a point somewhere between 10 and 12 billion by the end of the century. There are other nonlinear tendencies. A common pattern of growth in nature is the doubling pattern that the Ebola virus scared the world with at the end of 2013. The babies per woman curve looks like a slide in a playground. There are also some incidents that are lower in level 1 and level 4 countries, but higher in middle-income countries, which are the majority of countries. Dental health is a good example. Dental health gets worse as people move from level 1 to level 2, and then gets better from when people move from level 3 to level 4, for example. We need to understand the shape of a phenomenon's curve to better understand the phenomenon itself. By assuming we know how a curve continues beyond what we see, we will draw the wrong conclusions and come up with the wrong solutions. So when looking at world incidents and data, we should avoid making assumptions that a line will just continue straight, and we should remember that such lines are rare. Many trends do not follow straight lines but display doubling curves, or humps, slides, or S-bends. The fear instinct is our tendency to pay more attention to scary things. And the fear instinct is a terrible guide for understanding the world, because frightening and dangerous are not the same thing. Our natural fears make us overestimate certain risks. So risks should be calculated, not avoided, because completely avoiding risks means also missing opportunities. One of the strongest statements of the book, one that resonated with me the most, is in this section. It said, "Critical thinking is always difficult, but it's almost impossible when we are scared. There is no room for facts when our minds are occupied by fear." Here the author uses a great analogy. Imagine our attention filter has 10 instinct-shaped holes in it. And if a malicious or indifferent agent finds a way to craft a message that has that shape, bang, you're hooked. Again, it goes back to our evolution. Fears that once helped keep our ancestors alive, today help keep journalists employed. Most of us know this. The image of a dangerous world has never been broadcast more effectively than it is now, while the world has never been less violent and more safe. Remember, I'm going to repeat this once more. Things can be bad and getting better at the same time. The size instinct is our tendency to perceive things out of proportion when we look at a single number. We can easily misjudge its importance. Here's another great quote from the book. "The world cannot be understood without numbers, and it cannot be understood with numbers alone." Then what do? We never leave a number all by itself. We never believe that one number on its own can be meaningful. Also remember that rates are often more meaningful. So one of the best things we can do to make a large number more meaningful is to divide it by a total. The generalization instinct pushes us to generalize things by categories. An interesting byproduct of this is stereotypes. We get stereotypes when awareness around the problematic generalization increases. We should remember that categories can be misleading, so let's question our categories. We should look for differences within groups and similarities across groups. We can use differences within a group to further divide the group into smaller categories when necessary. We can also use similarities across groups to reevaluate our existing categories. And we should remember that majority simply means that more than half. This can be 51% or 99%. The destiny instinct is the idea that innate characteristics determine the destinies of people, countries, religions, or cultures. But data points to the fact that the main factor that affects how people live is not their religion, not their culture, nor the country they live in, but their income. And these things are in constant change. They evolve. Even slowly, even a 1% annual change that seems small and slow becomes impressive over a generation. To appreciate that, let's talk to someone who is a generation or two older than we are. The single perspective instinct is our tendency to stick to a single point of view and preferring simple explanations. We need to recognize that a single perspective can limit our imagination. We need to approach challenges from multiple angles to find practical solutions. We can also easily fall into confirmation bias. To prove that we are right, we collect examples and evidence that confirm our own theories. So we need to test our own ideas. We need to talk to people who can disagree with us, who can poke holes in our hypotheses and show us our weaknesses. And beware of simple ideas and simple solutions. Welcome complexity, combine ideas, compromise. History is full of visionaries who used simple utopian visions to justify terrible actions. The blame instinct is our tendency to seek simple and clear reasons for why a bad thing occurs. We tend to accept simple reasons to big problems, but the reality is usually messier. Bad things can happen without anyone intending them to. We should resist finding scapegoats by looking for causes, not villains. Blaming others prevents us from going further and deeper to discover real causes. And without addressing the root cause, we can't prevent those problems. Similarly, for good things, we should look for systems, not heroes. When someone claims to have done a good thing, be curious and verify whether the system would have caused the same outcome without any intervention. The urgency instinct, especially combined with the fear instinct when we are under time pressure, hinders our critical thinking. We think of worst-case scenarios and we increase our risk of making stupid mistakes. Increasingly, we do not act the same way when we perceive the risk far off in the future. The author lists the 5 risks that concerned him the most at the time of writing the book: global pandemic, financial collapse, world war, climate change, extreme poverty. Certainly, due to Hans Rosling's working with Ebola at different parts of his life, influenced his decision to put a global pandemic as the number 1 risk that concerns him. Remember that the book was published in 2018, shortly after Rosling's passing. As I'm recording this, at the end of 2021, we're nearing the end of the second year of a global pandemic that has already killed more than 5 million people globally. When a decision feels urgent, we need to step back and realize that we have time to take a breath and think critically and analytically. We need to insist on data before acting in a hurry. And also, we need to beware of fortune tellers and drastic actions. In summary, I'm humbled by the insight in this book. I can see that I've been victim of these 10 instincts and my outdated global factual knowledge many times. I try to build my leadership on self-awareness, and this book gave me new anchors that I can use to better secure myself in the future. Thanks for tuning in and listening. If you already read the book or if you end up reading it, please let me know what you think of it down in the comments section. I hope to see you in another video. Take care.